Welcome back, everyone, to Roompact's ResEdChat podcast. If you're new to the show, every episode we feature a variety of topics of interest to hired professionals who work in and with university housing, residence life, residential education programs, whatever you might call it. But we have another kind of fun bookend episode here. It's become kind of a yearly tradition. We have a introduction and a sort of conclusion episode with the summer ACUHO-I intern that Roompact remotely hosts and has been doing so for the past several years. So here we are at the end of another summer with the 2024 ACUHO-I summer intern for Roompact. So we'll kind of be doing a retrospective and also looking ahead for what's next for this year's intern. So Seferine, if you want to kind of just catch folks up on kind of the projects, the things that you have been working on this summer with Roompact, and I guess just anything, I guess, that you've sort of like learned through working on those various projects.
Yeah, thanks so much, Dustin. I feel like it really helps me to, I guess, track how it's gone that we've done this episode at the end to kind of, be the counterpart to the beginning. It feels like a really nice way to end. So I love that this is a tradition, and I'm excited to in years future watch or listen to the future interns and see what they're getting up to. So it's sort of fun to kind of stay connected to Roompact in this small way, or maybe in other ways. Who really knows? Yeah, I'm really excited about the work that we've been doing, and the RA360 sort of project is definitely nearing completion. So we've got just a few weeks left. August is going to be a busy time, as it always is. So it'll be really fun to kind of put the finishing touches on all the pages. So, in general, I guess the snapshot is that we've got 40 topics that we first sort of selected and curated, and wanted it to be this really comprehensive, sort of holistic view of professional development, especially from the student perspective, which was there's so many resources already on the Roompact site that are just available for anyone to click on and look through. But this was really the first time that we wanted to go deeper for the students, and offer something that was worded for them. And I think that was the theme that really got more full figured as we kept working through it. Is, well, what's the attention span of this sort of young professional who is doing this as part-time work. It's great work, great experience for them, but it's a little bit, I guess, optimistic to think that your staff member is going to click on a page that is several scrolls of reading and maybe worded at sort of this sort of intellectual level, where some of us have, degrees in higher education, and we're operating as professionals that have chosen this line of work. What does it look like for someone who is doing it for now, or who's doing it temporarily, to get something really great out of that work, which I think we all hope for. And I've had a staff of people that they actually might change their mind and be really into higher ed, but sometimes they're just going to be a lawyer, a doctor, an engineer. They're doing something else later. But residence life can really offer some really interesting experience that they can take with them anywhere. But knowing that they're busy, knowing that they're in school, knowing that they really have a lot on their plate most of the time, and the sort of student that you most see in the applicant pool tends to be a really involved student who also then has social life clubs and all these other things going on. So the balance, I remember being really hard to strike. When you need a little tidbit of something more for professional development in this really specific context, what do you look for? So that was the lens through which we picked the 40 topics, but also as we went through each one, really fun to say, of course, there's a really, really thorough, detailed way to go all the way with this topic. But how do we make it concise? How do we make it a little fun? And how do we kind of capture the attention of this student staff member or like the every man, like the every RA, like who do we who do we write this for? It's like the person who had a one-on-one with their supervisor who's trying to bring up like maybe an area of improvement for you is X. I've noticed that you're really good at a lot of things, but maybe public speaking is like not as fun for you. It isn't something that you easily have taken to now that you have the context of having to run a meeting with 50 residents that live on your floor. It'll be really valuable for you to work on it because you have to have a meeting once a month or whatever your school does. And so for that supervisor to kind of gently bring that up and then say, I have a great resource for you. Here's a quick page. I'm aware of this site. And it just has like a couple YouTube videos. It has a couple articles. It has a couple things that you can scroll through, take what you need. It's an intro to the topic. Let's talk about it next one on one. And I think that idea of how it would go also helped inform me when I was making it. Um, it was definitely a collaborative effort, of course. There was already blogs that were published through Roompact that were the under the umbrella of certain topics, and so we were actually able to almost catalog the content that already was there and organize it in a new way and kind of like link it back to itself. And so that was also really fun. I felt like I could see that this would have an impact for the other resources on the page as well. And then at some point, we were able to do outcomes and like learning outcomes. And so there is one place where you can go and you can have a long scroll through all 40 topics, all their outcomes. And that might be the one that me as a professional, or anyone in that situation could look at and be like, can this help me with winter training in January? Can this help me with my staff meetings once a week? Like if I notice my whole team maybe needs like a chat about ethics, ethics of the job and stuff like that, um, then maybe I can use some of these resources to deliver that content to my team in a way that they get to go right in, and it starts them thinking about something that maybe they want to explore on their own or bring back to their future career as well. So that's, I think, the overview. Um, it'll be really exciting. It starts to feel at the end like a portfolio that I've like sort of like put together, and it's something that we're going to be really proud of when it's like totally final, in just a couple weeks. Maybe by the time the episode is out and people are listening to this, they'll be able to look at it.
Yeah, I think so. I think just to place everything in time and space, which I like to do just for folks. Like we recorded the intro episode, like it was a couple of weeks, I think, or maybe like the first or second week of when you had started. So that was back in May. We're recording this like the final days of July. So, like you said, a couple more weeks getting into a busy August. So, we want to catch you before all of that to do this episode and reflect on having most of the internship instead of the rearview mirror. But yeah, when this episode comes out, folks should be able to find that, or should be able to find it very soon, because we'll post this, in a couple of weeks. But yeah, and I think it is interesting, just like kind of writ large, if folks are noticing, in this feed, and certainly just through the blogs and different things like Roompact, building up kind of that portfolio, that library of content that is speaking directly to an RA audience, versus it being for the folks who supervise them or work with them and everything, which is all well and good. But I think there is plenty of that, and it's great just to see that. I think there has been a really good response to the content that is written for a student staff member audience, and that you've helped to kind of double down on that and really build that out, because I think it is really powerful. I mean, like you said, whether those folks are pursuing a career in higher education or education, in any kind of role or organization, like it's just good stuff of like, being an RA, yeah, is like such a meaningful and kind of developmental kind of experience. So you kind of want to like harness and kind of maximize kind of that potential, because I think like a lot of it is sort of like it's going to rub off anyway of just like, yeah, being put in that position to run a floor meeting or whatever, and like, you'll kind of hopefully be able to kind of get better at that over time and kind of reflect on what worked well and what didn't and everything. But then like having something that can really speak to like, well, hopefully, your first floor meeting will go as effectively as possible, and then you can keep getting even better from there versus like, fumbling your way through it. And it's like, and that's fine. That's part of sort of the learning process. But like, building these like professional development resources that, could help an RA do their job better day to day, but also really kind of like crystallize the learning and development that they're having, to help them further in, higher ed, as like a full-time career for them, or whatever it is that they do. Because I think, yeah, like the communication skills, organizational skills, teamwork, all that kind of stuff. It's like, yeah, you want to really kind of like, harness all this good stuff that's happening, however long they would be an RA. So with, I guess, I appreciate you kind of going into kind of the full kind of detail of what you're working on. Is there, an aspect of what you did of like that you were just like really proud that you've been able to accomplish, or that you were able to learn, or like an issue that you were able to like overcome, or something, like just anything, I guess, sort of like a milestone or sort of a really kind of yeah, just proud moment, I guess, of like all that you had kind of worked on curating all that and creating all that content.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought of something while you were talking too. Another great road in for me is, well, what about your returner staff who actually, a lot of these things to them might feel like they've got a grasp on it, even the things they've worked on during their first year, but just kicking it back to what I was saying about using it throughout the year. Um, it might be really fun to see what a second year that you're asking to take a larger role on the team, like root yourself in this page and like, I think you're really good at this actually. Would you mind like talking about it at a staff meeting to the first years, to the people who are just starting, who see you automatically as a sort of mentor because you can answer some of their questions when they don't want to go to their supervisor, they might go to you instead. And so that's really fun. I think along the same lines, to answer your question, I was really proud because there was a moment where a former colleague who I had just mentioned, like what my summer gig was, had said, "Oh, I just found this, page on the site. Is this you? Is this what you're doing?" And just sort of like the tone of it was just, I was like, "Oh, it's not ready. Like, don't look at it, please. I'll tell you when it's done." Kind of like it made me think of like when someone's an artist and they're working on like a painting and it's like, not yet, or a poem or something like that, where I don't want you to read it yet. Um, and just sort of like the excitement. And before I said any of the things that I just said at the beginning of this episode, they said something that was so specifically right. They said something that was just, I can't wait to use this. Like, I can't wait to send this to like a team member who needs that particular topic. And maybe that's sort of a really loose way to answer the question, but the impact that it will have, that might not see it now. I don't know that I'm going to get all the statistics of like how many clicks on the page later. We were just talking about that recently. But there's an immeasurable sort of feeling that it will be continue to be used, but also continue to be updated. So if I, added a YouTube video about, service learning now, but in a year or two, someone's like, "Oh, here's a recent one that didn't exist when Seferine was working on this." It can just be popped right in. And so there's sort of this living, breathing module style learning for the students. And res life will continue to change. I think it sometimes feels like, as long as living on campus has existed, you know, living in a on campus has been somewhat the same, but the student population has changed. The new generation is so fun, and I'm looking forward to like the impact they have on the world. But it's also really interesting, like the conversations around being in college and providing what they provide as RAs. So many new conversations that even 10 years ago when I was in school, people weren't talking about mental health the same way, or like gender and all sorts of things. And it's just going to be really exciting to see it grow. So I'm looking forward to what it will be as much as I'm looking forward to what it is now.
Yeah, that's a great way to answer the question. I think that idea of like, it seems like I guess I assume, pursuing this project, you're like, I know this will be valuable, I know this will be great. So many people will find it useful. And sometimes, like when you're working on stuff like this, you do want to almost like show that like prototype and be like, does this make sense? Like I've been thinking about this, and somebody be like, oh my gosh, you made that? That's incredible. Like, yeah, that's amazing. And then other times, yeah, it's like you're guarding it, be like, no, 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 hold on. Like I know this is gonna be amazing. I want you to see it when it's like fully 100%. But like regardless, it is great when you're having that interaction of like, somebody sees it like, oh my gosh, like you made this? Like, I'm like, yes. It's like, that's incredible. It's so great. It's like, oh, okay, okay. It wasn't finished. I was so kind of worried, but yeah, I mean, it's just really amazing. Yeah, I guess to get that validation to reinforce, and kind of affirm what you were already, what you kind of already knew and what was sort of guiding what you're doing. And then I think, yeah, proud to know that like this will exist and be sort of a kind of a landmark resource that'll, be able to kind of evolve and mature and grow over time and everything. I think that is definitely something to be proud of with something like this, is that like, it's great now and it can continue to be great by, maintaining it and growing it and evolving it and all those sort of things. So I think that's definitely a really good call out. Yeah.
And I'm not possessive of it in a way. Like, I think sometimes we do projects and it's sort of like, this is for me, this is for my staff, and or we start to share it, but like only with like the colleagues we most talk to. But this feels some like it was immediately something that was very social and very shared by, dare I say, right, like the industry at large. Like anyone could click on this, and the initial sort of, oh, how do I make this not about my particular institution? Like, how do I talk about this topic outside of the context of like where I work and how things really function there? And that ended up being one of my favorite parts as well, is that it didn't have this identity of like my role at, like, in my building, my area, at my school. It really is meant to be that anyone, regardless of size of their team or their area of their residence, how many residents, like anyone could use this. And that sort of anonymity of the resource feels really, really cool as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, yeah, it's definitely something to be proud of, because I think that like obviously it's a great part of working in education, certainly higher education specifically, that people are very open and willing to do kind of the show and tell, at conferences or wherever else, and talk about sort of what's working for them, and people know that it's like, okay, well, Uh, likely if they're a similar institution type or size and all that, it's going to be maybe a little bit more relevant and I can adapt it from there. But I think if we can build upon that and create resources that are sort of agnostic of a particular context, it's like I'm sure some people are going to be very particular where it's like, well, I work at this kind of institution and like, I've defined, something that's like immediately relevant or speaks very specifically to my sort of, environment. But I think just broadly where it's like there are just generally things that we know are best practices for residential education programs and everything. So if we kind of not try to not get in our own way of assuming that like, well, this came out of, XYZ university, it's only going to work for large public, so like I'm not that, so I'm maybe gonna, read it with a grain of salt or something, or maybe even completely ignore it. I think it is like important to try to, and certainly like the organizing professional communities and associations sort of serve a similar role to this. But I mean, I think the more the better of just generally, I mean, just creating good educational, professional development kind of content, and trying to strike as kind of broad of an audience as we can, just to make sure that everyone knows, like, hey, here are just great, resources for your student staff members, and we're not gonna, get in our way of kind of anchoring around, yeah, like an institution type or something. So, yeah. So again, folks can should be able to check it out as of the release of this episode. So, we'll have links and things to do that in the description for the episode. But kind of moving on from that, I always like to kind of talk about, because obviously, summer often time for travel and fun stuff as well. As much as any of us are kind of working on strategic projects and things like this. So, what is something fun that you were able to do, whether it was just like catching up on a show or, traveling the world or spending time with people? What's something fun that you did that you want to share with folks?
Absolutely. And we may have even talked about this last time. I'm realizing I should have re-listened to the last one. I only remember some of it. The summer's gone by so fast. But one of the things that I was able to do is, especially with like the remote nature of this role, is work from anywhere. And so when I, visited my dad who's in New York, and my little nephew's out there, I was like working, not the whole time. It went over a weekend as well, but was able to sort of like physically move somewhere and like be working from there and like see family. Um, I also was on kind of like a staycation kick the past few years. So just the idea that like I'm in Boston most of the time, but instead of just like being bored at home once in a while, it's like, well, let me stay, at a hotel like nearby. And so that was sort of fun, and like designing a weekend around like the things that are right by the hotel and not having the stress of like I have to go all the way home after, was really fun. And same thing with Providence. I had my closest friend like in Providence all summer, and so I was able to visit him a handful of times. Sometimes a day trip because it was close, and sometimes like with overnights like at a hotel. So that was really fun. And I don't know, I'm all about the food and the art museums. And if you are familiar with Providence, Waterfire, tomorrow will be really fun.
Yeah. Well, and it's almost kind of funny of like it's almost a good thing of not going back and listening to that because it's like you almost like don't want to like force make those two puzzle pieces fit together because like you are here right now. What is on your mind or like reflecting like, oh, these are the fun things versus being like, oh, I didn't do all those things I thought I was gonna do 2 months ago. I don't get whatever. It's like what's going on right now? Like you're here. We're talking about like kind of where your head's at, and reflecting and learnings and all that kind of stuff. But and yeah, I mean, I think that's honestly this month for me, like this month of July. I'm recording here. I kind of took it easy from like the first half of the year. I was going out to like a conference or so. Each month on average, and kind of was just getting a little bit burnt out at the end. And then I've taken the opportunity for like different sort of like summer series of like different fun outdoor things that were happening locally here in Delaware where I live. And it's kind of reaffirmed to me. It's like, oh yeah, there's so many cool things going on. We can try to like, plan ahead more for these, next year and kind of anticipate things and knowing like the kind of things that we like to do that are like right here versus feeling like, yeah, you always have to like go far and away to, enjoy good food and all those kind of things. Um, so yeah, I think that is like a always a smart move, and even just that idea that yeah, like staying in a hotel locally like is sort of like peak staycation because you could be like, oh, I'm like yeah, going to like museums or something in my town, and it's like yeah, that's it. But then it's like oh, I'm literally like kind of being like pampered or something where it's just like oh, I'm staying somewhere, I don't have to like worry about laundry or whatever else, for like a day or two. But so yeah, that's great. I guess yeah, getting to like see folks, family and friends that are close by. It's always time well spent for summer. But um, as we close out, like I said, we'll kind of give a brief look to the future. Certainly the academic year is coming upon us quickly, and like I said, August will be kind of a busy month and everything. But just broadly, whatever again, just is top of mind for you in this moment. Like, what is next for you? What are you excited about that is coming up on the horizon?
Growing up, I was always really jealous of people who had their birthday during the year, but I think now I really appreciate that it signals the end of summer that I had a birthday like 10 days ago. And that really also feels like the bookend of like, oh no, it's almost over. But as I return to my day job, back at my institution, I'm really excited for the handful of like positions that were open. It almost feels like the first day of school in a way where it's like, oh, there's like new faces in the room. And I think at a large school in a large department, there was something really fun about like the people who've worked there 30 years, 25 years, 15 years, 5 years, and one day, and kind of like mixing those folks together and just all those different perspectives, just supporting our massive 12,000 student campus. So that'll be really exciting. And new year comes with like a new president. So our institution just did a search, and that person started on July 1st. So I haven't had much of a chance to kind of read up on what's already been going on, as we plan for like the inauguration of a like the next era, I guess, of an institution is how I'd like to think of it. So that'll be really fun. But in general, August is a time to be rooted in self-care because it's sort of the worst slash best time of the year, just really busy, really sometimes late nights, sometimes weekend work, and just sort of resigning yourself to it a little bit and like being dedicated because eventually it will be over and just kind of it's an exciting time and to be part of the education system in general is to kind of like think of these like peaks and falls of the year where everyone is sort of buzzing with excitement at this time and it's such a pivotal moment in the life of a person that they've like gone away to school, so when they're moving in and their parents are crying and even when they're mad at you about something that's like not your fault specifically, you also understand like why it's such a big deal on that day that that small inconvenience happened and you're the person who's there to help fix it. And so even the moments that are kind of like, I kind of need to decompress the day after having that conversation with that parent for 45 minutes, it's still really fun to kind of be part of that process and just be the friendly face that handed them their keys and like that's like a really important moment for them that they might remember for a long time. So, kind of trying to balance the like, I'm tired, this is a lot, with the this is really fun. And when it's like midterm season and they're all sad and I don't have to take a midterm anymore because I've like graduated grad school, I still get to be the friendly face that's like, I don't want you to worry about this random, elevator problem in the building while you're studying. And being there for the worst times and being there for the best times is like so classic res life that uh, just trying to have that positive outlook when everyone else is a little stressed. That's part of the job. So, really excited to meet the new crop of students. Their birthdays get like the year of their birthdays get like further and further. For those of you that might be listening and aren't in res life yet, you're just starting out. Like, ooh, when it starts to say oh 05, oh 06, and you're like, how old was I that year? Is very strange. So it's exciting to kind of get another little group to see them grow and especially this is actually the fourth year that I've been in my institution. So I had a really weird moment of like when I started, those freshmen just graduated this past May. And then I also happened to graduate with them with my master's. And so it's like a really full circle kind of like not my pandemic job panning out and I'm still here and like these students that went through so much craziness is and like some of them they voted for the first time then some of them are voting for the first time now. It's really intense, but really beautiful.
Yeah, you're just striking on all the very like existential chords here. Yeah, I mean, and that's great. I think just that perspective of like, yeah, those like little moments for you are big moments for other people. Looking at that sort of challenge as an opportunity, and certainly, yeah, like taking this month of August, which like it is like you said, it's like it's certainly a busy month, but it is like the start of a new chapter in so many different ways. Certainly even like the president, where it's like, yeah, I mean, I had this whole month of July. I'm sure that president was busy, but like the start of their first academic year. That's a big deal. And certainly, I guess the existential chords of like, sounds like it is kind of a new era for you in terms of like, those first students who graduated, you're sort of like, you closed kind of one book or starting a new book of like, I mean, I guess it's always going to be now students who are graduating every year that you've worked with, but then like with that new president and all that, it's like it's just this tangled knot of like existential, emotional kind of stuff. But it's like I guess it's good to like have that awareness and all that, and also like know that like this month of August is this sort of like transition into a lot of newness, a lot of opportunity, and trying to center yourself around like yeah the kind all those sort of like broader sort of forces in the context and everything, and just knowing like knowing better now I guess how uh important it is to kind of take care of yourself and all that so that you can give those meaningful experiences to other people. And um yeah, so a lot of good stuff to look forward to, and a lot of awesome stuff. It sounds like happening for you in this upcoming academic year. But yeah, I just appreciate you so much for doing these episodes and for being the intern this summer, and working on a great resource for student staff members and for those professional staff that support them. But and yeah, like I said, we'll have ways connect with what you've been working on and you and all that in the description show notes for this episode. But Yeah, this has just been great. I mean, it is really just a treat for me to now have been able to do this a few times now and speak with the interns and everything, and just kind of hear about your journey. So, just really appreciate your time and willingness to share.
Yeah, thanks for having me once again, and let's have a great year, everyone, right?